Hey everyone. In this episode, I sit down and I talk with Brad Hoppmann, CMO over InvestorPlace. He talks about his approach to developing and implementing a strong marketing strategy, along with tips on how to make your marketing campaigns easily understandable for non marketing execs. Brad's been in the media and publishing space for 20 plus years, and he's worked with companies like Jim Cramer's Streetcom. He sits down to talk with me about the benefits of having a well organized marketing team and how to have productive conversations with opinionated coworkers. There's really a lot to unpack in this one, so let's get into it. I was just thinking, when I was talking to Jalali, it's been, you know, I was thinking it was 10 years, but maybe it's been a little bit longer than that now. This was back when we were doing stuff at the street.com, right?
Yeah, yeah. You guys are made a huge impact on our business too. Just a couple small, little actionable ideas made, 150% difference in our acquisition. So it was awesome working with you guys.
So I was just talking to somebody earlier today at a pretty high-powered, CMO at a B2B company, and he was telling me, how they were just getting ready to do an acquisition, and we were talking about how much media really. Let me rephrase. How much publishing plus software publishing plus something else is really sort of the wave of the future, right? Anyway, he was describing it that way, and I thought that was kind of interesting because I mean, you guys were doing that back, sort of before it was a trend. You were
Yeah,
a media company that also did something else, in order to monetize through, in this case, subscription revenue, right?
yeah. It was literally we were the cross section between Yahoo, which was this huge traffic source, CNBC, which is a huge television source, and this superstar, Jim Cramer. How do you kind of fit it all together? And it's funny because, back then we were figuring out, how to get the clicks, what the value of a click was, what the cost of the click should be, what our lifetime value of those, clicks, publications, and relationships were. And we're, just figuring out the numbers of all of that stuff. We would ask our partners what we think the numbers should be, and nobody even knew the answer. It's like, I don't know, you guys are the first ones to figure it out, so you tell us. So it was a universe we were figuring it out, and the interesting part is coming full circle to that. We just this week we're at a executive retreat where all our executives are getting together and trying to brainstorm how to improve our business, and that's one of the things that came up is how do you create this like hub, a guru centric or we call them analysts or gurus. How do you create a guru centric hub where you can get all of that information in an easy to access part of your website and then get people to that part of your website so they can go off into whether they're into podcasts or whether they're into full videos or just a research report or like how do you create that like hub? How do you evolve from being a publishing business to a media hub business? And that we're back into that now.
Yeah, that's the thing is I don't think that trend has really ever lost steam. I think it's gaining steam, especially with B2B, software companies. You see a lot of them snapping up properties these days, right?
Hmm.
And I think that's, developing that community is key, right? And doing it in such a way that, really upper funnel demand gen, like true demand gen, is really where it's at. And we've spent the last let's call it 10 years or so, and I think you'll appreciate this, right? Especially in B2B,
Hmm.
we've spent the last 10 years or so really, how do I say this? Um, Focusing so much on attribution, by
Hmm.
channel,
Hmm.
that we've sort of lost sight of the big picture, of what it
Right.
takes, to be able to, drive demand up front, up funnel, and then, bringing that in and then understanding like your true sort of what I call your blended CAC, right?
Right.
And that we've sort of lost that. And I was talking to somebody the other day about this. It was an advertiser, and I made this comment. I said something to the effect of, well, we tend to, in a marketing department, sort of optimize in uh, sort of our own little. We optimize based on job title,
Right.
right? Does that make
And
sense? So
channel
like,
and media type. So you get
yep,
sometimes you get so carried away, you even try to brand separately into each of these areas and have like a separate look and you forget the bigger picture.
that's right. Yeah, you do, and it's very difficult, I think. And what you see are these little disseparate, sort of disjointed little mini marketing tactics that don't really
Hmm.
blend well together, right? They don't play nicely together, and what you end up with is, sort of a diluted, downstream funnel, and that's and you dilute your message, you dilute, the value proposition, don't resonate as well, with your core ICP. It's just anyway. When I
It's a
was
it's a huge problem in our business. It's a
yeah,
huge problem because the email marketer wants to do things the way the email marketing's always been done. Pay per click
yes,
folks and media buyers want to do things differently.
yes,
The editorial person themselves wants to do things differently, and it's if you don't
yeah.
have a way to get everybody on the same page, it can be a huge challenge.
Yeah, and think about it from, the leadership perspective, right? So you've got your CMO, you've got your director of marketing, they're all sort of struggling to, they've got the big spreadsheets that they're looking at, and then, breaking it down by channel and CAC by channel, and if you're lucky, right?
And
And
they each have their own incentives that drive certain things. Yeah.
A- Absolutely. And that is the trick, right? Is, getting these, breaking down those walled silos, operating sort of in a holistic view. I think and I'm curious to hear what your thoughts on this are, but, when you do that, when you have a really well organized marketing team that's like working together, what ends up happening is you start caring a little bit less about CPL at the
Hmm.
top of the funnel, and you care more about what's going on downstream
Hmm.
in terms of CAC. So
Yeah, and I'm glad you said glad you mentioned CAC because there's a lot of people in our business who don't really focus on it, and now as a company we're starting to go in the direction we're going down the path of going public, and it forced us as a business to really start looking at CAC, and um, you know. Uh, 5 years ago, it just was one of those things where in the consumer publishing business, people didn't really talk about it. They would talk about cost per acquisition, or they would talk about some of the media buying metrics. But because everyone's back end CAC was so much different, it just wasn't freely talked about in the industry. But what the problem with that is you don't really think about all of your assets that you're devoting or all your resources you're devoting to this bigger holistic idea. Lifetime value is easy to talk about, but if you don't know what your true costs are, CAC slips completely out. And I've watched so many businesses go under because they just aren't paying attention to it, or at least they don't do a good job spending money or investing capital because of that reason.
yeah, yeah, I think that's exactly right. And the CPL model, or even defining what your true ROAS is on an advertising campaign, is defined by actually what's happening downstream, when you actually turn those, turn those subscribers, turn those users into customers. And so it doesn't, I talk to people a lot about this, where there's sort of this disjointed, a disjointed metric, when they're looking at saying, oh, well, they're sort of waving a big, happy sign saying, I've got a $25 cost per lead, and I feel like I'm doing really well. And yet your CFO is sitting there looking at you saying, no, you're failing miserably, and I don't understand why you're failing miserably. right? What's going on? The marketer is looking at it and saying, I think I'm doing great because I've got my, my $25 CPL, but that's not actually generating downstream revenue. Those aren't turning into customers. So there's an there's a quality aspect of it, right? That goes,
Mhm.
into this metric that I think so many people have been sort of not paying attention to. So it's interesting to see that you guys are doing that.
Yeah, the
Um,
first step we took to like deal to address it was we started changing our structures from incentives related to cost per click, cost per lead, even cost per acquisition further downstream, and we started talking about what is our life. We started, setting goals and also incentives and measuring by performance related to. The first step was what is our 90-day lifetime value. And then the next step was once you start understanding our 90-day lifetime value a little bit better, then we started getting into projecting what the 1 year value will be based on that 90-day lifetime value piece. And then once we got out to a year and understood and could guess pretty reasonably what a year or even 2 years looks like, and even in some cases now we're pretty good at calculating what the 4 and 5 year lifetime value is. Now we can start talking about CAC. We start talking
yeah.
about all the costs of not only the acquisition costs but the monetization costs throughout the full universe, and it's helped
Yeah.
our business tremendously.
I think it's funny how you see a lot of marketing campaigns that are pretty short-sighted, right? When you talk about scale, when you talk about
Mhm.
accelerating growth, if you don't understand, what goes into that LTV, you really don't know how to much to invest, upfront,
Right.
right? You don't have any faith in, the dollars that you're putting in the front end that are then going to come out the back end and how much that's going to be worth. And I think the challenge, especially for like early stage, right, is you're sort of modeling that, and then you're betting dollars against that. And of course, that's that's what you're doing when you're doing a pitch deck, early on
Mhm.
for like a Series A or something. But um, you're betting against the model, and the investors are betting on the model, right? That what your LTV to CAC ratio is actually pretty close, to sort of what you're modeling, and
Yep.
the scale and the acceleration from that. So it's cool. So
Yeah,
hey,
that's where.
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, that's where our current pitch decks are right now. That's exactly what we talk about when we're going out to the street. That's exactly what we're talking about when we're finding large acquisition partners or people that we are going to partner long term with. Those are the types of conversations that happen all the time. So what we want to do is we target our spending and our efforts to from a CAC perspective, and we put all try to put all the numbers in and understand it. Typically, if you just use for us at least for our media costs, if we use just our media costs and try to calculate cost per acquisition and do a break even on that, and that helps us for us, we're in that stage now where that kind of growth and that kind of profitability funds future investment. Certainly, if we wanted to, we could start being extraordinarily competitive in the market and start to flush other people out, or at least get better wallet share because we're willing to spend more to buy more customers. But right now, we're just trying to fuel our growth with future profitability.
Yep.
So.
So, so do you do? How does your organizational structure work for your marketing team?
So we have media buyers that work in a group. Each of them are focused on their own media buying. Like for example, we have a name gen email media buyer. We'll have someone that works in pay per click for name gen. We have email and name gen or email and pay per click that do what we call straight to paid. So name gen is our name gen or lead gen is our just acquiring a lead. Efforts in media buying, but we also have a straight to paid media buying where we try to, we call it our front end of our business, but it's the $99 and a below loss leader type of front end.
Yeah.
And that is a big part of our media buying efforts. And then partnerships, which are typically we'll do partnerships for $1,000 or more type products with other people that are in our space. That's a third grouping of, so it's name gen, front end, and partnership are three distinct groups. And then they have media buyers that specialize in the type of media they buy, whether it's affiliate marketing, whether it's buying lead gen, email, or you may also have like lead gen display, lead gen affiliate. So that's kind of how we break it out. But
So in
it's
term,
to what you're saying before, it's how far into the funnel. There's three areas of how far into our funnel or our lifetime relationship there are. There's name gen, lead gen, then there's front end, and then there's back end type of partnerships. It's broken out by those three, and then we have media buying or partnership specialists for each one of those groups.
so I'm fascinated by that, right? So I mean, there's quicker return, higher, quicker ROI channels that you just mentioned, and those tend to sort of subsidize some of your longer term
That's right.
ROI, right? Yeah. So and then when you're looking at it, as the CMO, you're looking at it and saying, okay, this is how it all blends together, and this is how we're going to sort of attack this particular market, or you're going to hit this particular growth. Okay.
That's
So
right.
so maybe just for those who don't know a little bit about your company, and or maybe they're not in the finance space, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you do and what
Sure.
what your company does and what your product is.
Sure. Yeah, so we're in the business of big ideas. We try to go out and find ideas for people to help improve their lives, specifically in the finance area. For us, we've been the most successful when we have an obsessive focus on the cultivation of those ideas and explaining those ideas to the general public. And it sounds pretty simple the way I describe it, but it's actually extraordinarily complicated to try to take a huge investing idea and as a company sound like you're unique and different and you have a lot to offer, but also make it easy for the general public to understand. It's really easy to go out and find people that are buyers of investment research. It's easy to go find those folks, but those kind of campaigns don't move the needle in our company because it's a small area. Where we find our big successes is when we go out to the general public and show them that we can provide value through investing in these big ideas that are out there. And I can give you a couple examples. There's investing in cannabis was really hot in the last 5 years. Investing in cryptocurrencies has been really hot in the last 3 or 4 years. Those kind of big life-changing ideas that are out there, how do we take those concepts and what the opportunity is and make it really simple for someone to understand? That's the business we're in, big ideas.
So taking big ideas and breaking them down into bite-sized chunks.
Yeah, that's right. So we call it. This is going to sound kind of funny, but and it's ironic because my son is now 9 years old. But we call it being smarter than a fourth grader. So how do you take a huge, big investing idea like cryptocurrency and explain it to a fourth grader? Because if you can do that in a campaign and make it so easy that even a fourth grader could understand it, and make the promotion so readable that even a fourth grader can understand it, then that is what we found to be the most successful for us. So we'll actually take the actual promo itself and put it inside of Word, and you can do they're called Flesch Kincaid scores. So you can go down and analyze exactly what the Flesch Kincaid score is for any promotion, and it'll give you what grade level. And when I first started doing this with a lot of our writers, we'd see 10th, 11th grade, sometimes 12th grade. You would think that would be great. You think that'd be very helpful. Like that means it's a great, cool idea that has a lot of description that sounds really interesting, and people would like it because it sounds
Yeah.
like a big complicated idea, but it's terrible actually. What you really want to do is get down to the fourth grade level, and that obsessive strategy that we have internally with our copywriters and with our marketing staff, you just drill it home all day long. Like it's got to be so simple a fourth grader can understand it. So, and I actually go to my fourth grader and ask him if he understands what this set, and that's a good marking of a campaign. If a fourth grader can understand it, it can scale. And that's always the problem. If a promotion's too targeted, you just can't scale it.
I love that. I really do. We look at websites all the time, right? We look at B2B sites and it just looks like it's, spit out of like one of those, BS, name generator, or topic generator kind of buzzwords and all of the other stuff. And what ends up happening is you can't grasp as a prospect, you can't grasp the concept, in a few seconds or less, much less communicate it. And I think that's the thing, right? I mean, it seems like that's what you're tapping into, is the fact that conceptually you're taking a hard topic and you're bringing it into something that's really easily digestible and understandable, and therefore able to communicate verbally, right, to somebody else as you're talking to them. And that's like the best kind of, that's the best kind of way to be able to communicate, the power of your brand, right?
Yeah, and you'll try to explain it through training when you bring on new employees and your staff, and you work with people, and you try to get them to understand it, and you can explain it 30 times over, and it takes a long time for people to really grasp this concept. One of the tools we use is we'll have them look at a promo, look at 2 or 3 different pieces, and then show them which ones were successful, and then show them that Flesch-Kincaid score. So we'll use that as a tool for people to go and review and help them understand how to continue to work harder to get it easier for people to understand. And there's a lot of tricks for how to do this. And without getting into the weeds, just having that one thing for your copywriters, for your marketers, for your editorial folks, for the people on the web who are trying to create little hero blocks or description sections about people. That one thing, if you get super focused on it and you can communicate it in an easy to understand way, we call it, when we're in a pitch meeting, we're like, can you please explain it to me as if I were a fourth grader? And then that's what gets everyone to understand what you're trying to get at.
I think it also removes some of the ego, in those kinds of conversations too, right? When you're sitting around a table and everybody's trying to be smarter than somebody else, right? You sort of like take all of that out of the conversation, and you're sitting there and you're just talking to each other in plain English. It removes a lot of that, confusion, and it sort of cuts right to the core and eliminates a lot of that noise.
Yeah, and to be honest, I stole this from my CEO. My CEO is just awesome. Brian Hunt, he's awesome at going into a meeting and saying, wait. He'll stop people and just say, can you please explain it to me like I'm a fourth grader? And that cuts right to the chase. It's just the politest way to be, to get people into out of overly complicated explanations, and it just forces people to just get onto the right track and just start explaining it in an easy to understand way.
That's awesome. So let's maybe go back a little bit. I mean, it's an interesting segue. I think, what got you into this, right? So everybody sort of has a story, and
Sure.
I'm curious to hear what your story is that sort of brought you to this point.
Yeah, sure. The craziest thing is when I first started my first job out of college, I studied quantitative methods for business, which is basically a complicated way of saying I studied numbers and how to use numbers to model businesses. And I really enjoyed numbers, and I really enjoyed business, and I liked computer programming. So those 3 things kind of came together, and my first job out of college was B2B, and I thought my whole life was going to be in B2B. I turned down offers from Dell, Sun Microsystems, Oracle, to go work for a company called Gartner, which was at the time it was a lot smaller, but it was a research company. And I thought my whole life, I went through college talking to friends and family about my whole life being in tech, and I thought I was going to be a B2B tech guy, and that was just going to be what I was going to do for my whole life. I had no thought in the world about going to B2C. So that's where all my college was. That's my first 3 or 4 years was focused on just B2B, and Gartner was a great place to learn publishing, learn how marketing works, and learn how technology works. So it was a great place to cut my teeth. But I had no thought in the world that I'd be in B2C or in financial publishing. So went to go work. It was funny because when I worked at Gartner, I had a buddy of mine who's just started a business in publishing, and he started talking about how awesome of a business the publishing business was, and what type of profit margins that it had, and you know, really sold me on the idea of just publishing in general. And coming from Gartner, which was a publishing business, they did a ton of consulting as well, but they were a publishing business. You saw how profitable it was, and you saw the dynamics of how it worked, and I was in love with the idea of publishing and subscription marketing from the very beginning. So he said, he came to me one day and he said, listen, I can't. I think that technology is a great place to be. He's like, but I'm on the ground floor of a company that doubles in size every single year, and I'd really like you to come join. And I said, oh, that sounds interesting. And he just started talking to me about the business. His name's Porter Stansberry, and he was a high school buddy, and he went on to build one of the biggest. And I joined one of the biggest companies, one of the biggest brands in our industry. And when I first started, it was like a $2 to $4 million business. The next year was an $8 million business. It was a $28 million business the year after that, and it was just a lot of fun. And it was an environment where we could learn a lot. There's back in the old days, it was just a very open. You could learn anything and try anything. You come in as a marketer, but you could also write copy. You could also, customer service folks were allowed to write copy. They're allowed to market. It was a very open learning experience back then, because they were small businesses, and it was a lot of fun.
And then what was the name of that company?
Stansberry Research.
Stansberry Research. And then Stansberry Research, then that moved you into, what was after that for you?
So then I went to the Street.com and worked with the Street.com. Did that for 2 or 3 years. Wanted to understand this whole TV phenomena, and I thought that media was an area that I really wanted to go in. I also thought at the time that if you wanted to do finance, doing it somewhere near Wall Street would be kind of interesting from a career perspective. So, and I always wanted to live in New York. I thought at the time I was living in Baltimore, and I thought New York would be a really interesting place to go work. So I got an offer to go be a VP, which at a Wall Street publishing company, a VP sounded really cool to me at the time. But looking back, it was really watching, getting in and understanding how a Yahoo partnership works, and getting in and understanding how someone being on TV and how to market them offline, and create free e-letters to try to go find those people on the web, and how to engage them, and bring them in, what to pay per lead. That's where I really started understanding name gen, lead gen, online traffic, and online partnerships. So we went from publishing newsletters, which is what I did at Stansberry, to really understanding how the whole media business worked in New York. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. And that's the Street.com was connected pretty tightly with Jim Cramer, who's now obviously a large personality in the, in the finance space. You see him a lot, on TV these days, but before, even back then, I mean, his show was getting started, and you guys partnered up to create, the brand that became the Street.com.
Yeah, and he was a genius, by the way. Just taking the concept of, for us, we knew. So we talk about in our business, we talk about conversion rates a lot, and a lot of people will express, DMA folks will express the conversion rate as the first renewal. People who are really active in lead gen will talk about conversion rate being when that lead converts to a paid subscriber. But in financial publishing, they'll call the true conversion, and this is more theoretical. They'll call the true conversion is the time that the person listens to your recommendation and goes out and actually buys a stock and takes action that you've given him. We call that true conversion. And when you can actually get someone to take action, that is when we know we have a lifetime customer. That is when we know that they're rowing in the boat with us. That is when they know that they're one of us and they can get further into our culture. And we call that true conversion. So we like to do things to ask them to take action, to go out and make these investments. So we call that true conversion. And when I saw Jim Cramer on television, and he has this little console that's in front of him, and he's buy, sell, and he hits these buttons, and it just compartmentalized those concepts of getting someone to go out and take action and getting someone to understand, what kind of action they need to take, and literally like put it on a button, and you hit a button and it clearly define instead of, with a lot of people in our space, you get a lot of two-handed economists. They'll say, well, on one hand, this is a very good stock to invest in, but on another hand, I'm not sure if you should jump all the way in. And you get all these mixed messages. Like Cramer on television made it really clear what he was telling people to do by just hitting a button. And I thought that was genius.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And you do that in copy, right? When you tell stories. And, when you are able to, if you think about communities or writing copy, the clarity with which you do it is key, right? And so when you tell a story, when you're taking a position rather than waffling back and forth, even if it is divisive, it's going to be more memorable. And I think, that's exactly that you're right. I think that's the genius, with good copywriters and obviously somebody like Jim Cramer, who's a media personality that, is divisive on purpose and does it, I think there's it's not, I think it's his personality too, but, but in general, it's also, it's strategic, right? Because that's what gets people talking, whether you're on one side or the other, right? So
it's marketing genius. It truly is marketing genius, just watching it. And, to your point, like one of the challenges I ran into, I loved working there, and I loved Jim Cramer, and he was a marketing genius when it came down to small tactical things. But one of the challenges I ran into there, and it's working with a huge personality like Jim, he refused to sell his products for less than $300 because he believed from a brand perspective that hurt his brand personally. And absolutely refused to, in order for us to really do a great job of knowing what the value of a customer is, we want within the first 90 days for them to take action and buy a product for $100 or less. It's easier for us to measure the value of that customer if we can make that happen. And if your product, and if you're not willing to go under $300 for one of your loss leaders, the size of your list is going to be really small. And that was always a challenge with working with Jim. He was awesome in a lot of ways, but he just absolutely refused from a brand perspective. He thought that it hurt the company's brand for selling products less than $300 and just would not back down. We would even show him that we would do elasticity curves. I don't know if you spend a lot of time on elasticity curve, you know that what you'll do is you'll do price testing, and if you price test at 49, 99, 129, 199, 250, and 300, you'll see a curve develop, and it's basically the number of subscribers you can get to do that. And what we found is at the $99 level versus the $300 level, we would get 4 times the revenue at the $99 level. And we would show him the elasticity curve, and he would say, it's going to hurt our brand. And that's one of the challenges of working with someone who's a media superstar is
Yeah.
some things you're just not going to get past.
Yep. Yep. And so that's one of those things where, you're dealing with, sort of the hippo in the room, right?
Yep.
And
The highest paid person's
they're
opinion.
highest paid person's opinion. Yeah. And
Hmm.
and so that hippo in the room is saying, this is something that I like, this is something that's attached to my larger vision for the brand. And I think that trumps, something that is, something that clearly is proven out by testing and the data. So how do you have a conversation with, a strong-minded personality like that, a hippo in the room per se, that is an example where you, how do you present that, in terms of like new testing opportunities, strategy,
It's
things
it's
like
a,
that?
it's an interesting dynamic in our business because the folks that are the gurus, the Jim Cramers of the world, those are the people who write the content, and time and time again we see these awesome writers and financial minds also have egos, and they also are very smart. And the challenge that can happen is a very smart, very big ego that has seen their world through a prism or a color filtered lens. They're not looking at the
or
data every day,
or
and so
previous successes,
or
right?
pre, th- their previous success in management. It's not what we in publishing necessarily do, and that's we like to go find rock stars that are awesome money managers, because that is a great place for a financial guru to cut their teeth. And that's not necessarily in line with name gen, front end strategies. And we literally will show them something that expanded the business, or another franchise within our business. We'll show them the numbers, and I joke about it, but it takes 10 conversations. It literally takes 10 conversations. And the the really big challenge is not to get frustrated through the process, and not to try to express ego, or not to express in any way that you know something they don't know. It has to be 10 really thoughtful conversations, and you can't be telling them these things. You have to ask them questions and draw them into it. My mom was an educator, and she would talk about the word education comes from the Latin word educere, which means leading people out. It doesn't mean pushing information in. So that's the challenges. You got to find a way to get them to come with you in the conversation, because they're smart, very opinionated people, and if you the first time you do it, you're not going to figure it out. You're not going to be able to crack the nut on how to get to his what makes him think through what is good value for him to do. And you may never be able to cross the bridge of what their brand mentally is, but once you show them, especially if you show them things that are happening right around them, once you show them the numbers and just keep that dialogue going, and talk about it with them every week for 10 weeks, it takes 10 conversations, and you just have to be really patient.
I love that. I think that's absolutely right. And if you're dealing with a strong personality, having a conversation that draws them out, in terms of, why do they think the way they think? Where are the preconceived notions? What are the areas, that are sort of like rubbing up against, the recommendation that you're trying to make, so that you can sort of dissect that a little bit. And there's it's sort of like a two-way communication at that point, right? So it starts out as one way, right? And then at some
Yep.
point in those 10 conversations, it starts to become two ways.
Yeah, and that first step of just understanding and accepting it's going to take 10 conversations, that allows you to really map it out. And it allows you to say, you know what, instead of 10 conversations where I do the exact same conversation, then it says, all right, well, conversation one, and that's how I put it on a spreadsheet. And conversation one, here's the ground we're going to have to cover. Conversation two, here's what we're going to have to talk about, top of the funnel. Conversation three, we're going to have to talk about the kind of ads that drive the good behavior. And as soon as you map it out into 10 conversations, it's a lot easier to do. If you think that you're going to be able to do it in 2 or 3 conversations, especially with someone who's very smart, it's almost unfair to think that that's going to happen.
That feels like an ad campaign to me, by the way.
Yeah.
So if you think about an ad campaign in terms of the number of impressions you need to make, along the buying decision-making journey that a prospect has, you can sort of see how that maps out, right? So at the very beginning, it's very top of the funnel awareness, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then midstream, right? There's somewhere, there's some decision making, where you're influencing some of the decision, right? How we compare against something else or a different product, right? And then, maybe the next one is, a little further in the conversion, like bottom of the funnel, right? So I love how you're doing that. Like if you're spreadsheeting that out, it sort of sets the expectation up front. There's time, and then there are steps, to getting from one stage to the next.
Yeah, and also the understanding of the introspection, looking at yourself and realizing that you're part of the issue. Like if it's not them that doesn't understand it necessarily, it's that you haven't spent the time to explain it to them, and it needs 9 more conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. So I think I'm gonna just to wrap things up. I wanted to ask a question. What if you sort of had the chance to go back in time and start all over again at the beginning of your career? What would you focus more of your time on to develop your career?
I would have spent the first 2 years just writing ads and writing promotions. That is, especially when it gets into industries, that the understanding, as you get further into it, you'll get a good feel for what works and what doesn't work. And that's one of the great secrets of marketing is do more of what works and less of what's not working. And having an understanding of what works versus what doesn't work is awesome. But if you haven't actually written a promo or written ads and spent a lot of time on writing promos and ads, it really helps you kind of put the pieces together. And also, how hard it is for the person on the other end to put all that stuff together too. So that I would say that the most important thing that I would have done differently is right out of college, I would have just, and this is counterintuitive because I came right from, quantitative modeling and numbers and marketing, and I was looking more from a data side at everything, and from a programming and development side, how to do these things. But if I could do it all over again, what I would have done is just spent time writing promos and just do that for 6 months or a year or even 2 years.
I love it. I think that I would say one of the same exact things. I would say copywriting and learning how to manage up, right? Learning how to set expectations, how to work, develop my EQ, and manage up.
Yep.
Understanding, how to connect what it was that I was doing to sort of the way that the CFO or the CEO thinks, right? And developing that skill set along the way. And I have a marketing manager that works, with me, and she was asking me the other day. She's like, "Hey, what kind of books should I read, to be able to sort of like get,
Hold on.
should it be on, like conversion rate optimization, or should it be on, should I be focusing on things like marketing operations, or, should I take some, coding courses, what should I be taking?" My recommendation to her, like, learn how to tell a story. And when you can do that, the design, the website, the brand, all of these things sort of layer on top of that. So.
Yeah, this is also a great book written by Eugene Schwartz, Breakthrough Advertising. It is amazing. And if you contact, there's a gentleman named Brian Kurtz who is also a legend. he and a few others, if you contact them directly, they sometimes will even ship you a free book and a free learning set of courses. They've got a couple workbooks to go along with this too. Yeah, I mean those copywriting legends. Some of the stuff that they taught is just amazing. If you just spend the time to learn how to position copy and position marketing, that's something that differentiates in our business differentiates a good organizational CMO from a CMO that's driving revenue,
Yes.
and there's a huge difference in how their career paths look, how they're compensated, on everything. And if you have that one piece of knowing what's going to work in the copy and knowing how to fix it, and knowing how to get something that kind of works to really work, those things are so key for our careers and just the day-to-day operations of these businesses. And it doesn't matter if you're B2C or B2B. Learning even B2C strategies they're all applicable for B2B. The selling triggers are very, very similar. The tone is completely different, and the content's different. But like the truly understanding how those triggers work, Ogilvy is also a good read. He had a lot of great stuff too. Yeah, I would say I like Bob Bly's book. I like Eugene Schwartz's book. Clayton Makepeace's. He had a copywriting course. It was like $4,000 or $5,000, but I think there's a couple PDFs of it now being sold at a cheaper rate. But there's some really great. And if anybody wants to contact me, I'm happy to push them in a direction of where to find these copywriting courses. But Bob Bly's book is a good start. I
Yeah,
love it.
Gary Halbert, you could
Halbert,
sort of just go
yeah.
down the list.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a ton of them that are just amazing. I think we could make an entire episode just on talking about copywriting. We should probably do that one of these days.
Yeah,
But hey,
it's key. It's key.
yeah, well, hey, Brad, it was great catching up with you. This was a ton of fun. I think we're going to have to do it again here one of these days.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and looking forward to seeing your next success continue. So, that's the other thing is finding people to be around and to associate with and to partner with that are serial success people. So, I'm glad to see the continued success on your end too.
Yeah, same here. Thanks so much. Thanks, Brad.
Good spending time. Yeah, have a good one.